Okay, at this time, I'm going to call the February 15th Board of Commissioners meeting to order. We will start out with a prayer from Commissioner Heberling and the pledge by Commissioner Sarcella.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together as leaders of our county. We pray, Lord, that through this meeting, you'll give us direction. We pray for your blessing upon this meeting. And Lord, we thank you for the freedoms that we have here in this country to serve you and to follow our Constitution and make laws abiding that are part of our Constitution here in the United States. We thank you for this in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. At this time, we'll have Jody perform roll call.
Sure. Chairman Black,
Here.
Commissioner Heberling,
Here.
Commissioner Sarcella,
present.
Commissioner Ballard,
Present.
Commissioner Wyatt.
Present. Thank you, Jody.
Between here and present.
3 presents to 2 ears.
Get a uniform with that next time. Moving on to additions, corrections, or deletions to today's agenda. If there are no additions, corrections, or deletions, I would entertain a motion to adopt today's agenda.
Move to adopt the agenda.
Support.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Wyatt, support from Commissioner Ballard. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to our meeting minutes from our February 1st meeting. Corrections to the minutes. If there are none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Support.
We have a motion from Commissioner Ballard, support from Commissioner Sarcella. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Correspondence, petitions, and introductions. We have none today, so we'll move on to commissioner reports. We will start with Commissioner Sarcella.
I was able to attend Croswell's city meeting. Their new manager, David Tate, is in place now and moving forward with a lot of projects there. They have been applying for some grant applications, and they're having some issues with some blight, but they have a court date on some of that. And then they're applying to the county for a demolition permit. Apparently, everything's in order for the 2 buildings that burned in town. They're going to be able to tear those down. And Sand Lake Township is reworking their zoning ordinance. Ironically enough, the state had sent them information on becoming a charter township. And then it turns out as they were considering that, the state sent another letter and said, you can't be a charter township because we counted the people in the village of Lexington as part of the township. So then they went back down below being a charter township. So that got thrown out the window. And they're working on a couple other things in regards to investments. As everybody's seeing right now, most of the dollars municipalities want to put in CDs and so forth, but rates have been extremely low. That's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Bill. Gary?
Okay, thank you. I attended township meetings this past month and past couple weeks. And part of the discussion at one of the township meetings was blight. That seems to be an issue with every township. In the Bridgehampton Township, we had the assessor there explaining how things are going to possibly change how they assess and do their taxation in townships. And of course, there was a solar at another township. But I attended a Washington Township meeting last week, and there was a couple there in a Washington Township that obviously in the marijuana business already. And it's called, they handed out a leaflet here, and I'll just read it very quickly. Michigan Marijuana Micro Business. And I don't know if any of you have heard of that or not, but basically they were saying being the owner of a marijuana micro business can provide many opportunities not previously available in Michigan's cannabis industry. The micro business is a model that's great for entrepreneurs looking to set themselves apart, running a small business that is in tune with their passion and desire to participate in the legal cannabis market. And there's one more paragraph because I can read it faster and I try to explain it. In addition, the following rules, which are still in finalization, relating to micro business and the Michigan Department of License and Regulatory Affairs, LARA, You will need to see if you can, the desired municipality allows marijuana micro business to operate. Basically, what they're trying to do in Washington Township is have them change their master plan to include this. Each marijuana municipality receives a portion of the state excise tax and recreational marijuana that determines by how many providing centers and micro business operates in the municipality. Many municipalities are not keen on having numerous provision centers, storefronts within their boundaries. However, we can expect many cities and townships to jump on the micro business concept as it will allow them to attain greater share of recreational marijuana tax revenue. And they went on to explain where they're located in a 5-acre property. And according to them, with this micro business, they're supposedly going to pass on Lansing, they can grow as much as they want. So the Washington Township took it under consideration review. And report.
Thank you, Gary. Good report. I myself attended a Forestville Village meeting. Same thing as I've always been doing here lately is talking about ARPA funding. And the Village of Forestville is working on some improvements. A matter of fact, we will see their master plan for Parks and Recreation at the Planning Commission here shortly. That's all I have. Roger?
I attended City of Marlette and Marlette Township meetings. Marlette Township dealing with blight like most townships. City of Marlette, they're working on their new pool house project. They've received a grant for that, so they're going to build a new one, and that's coming along nicely. And pretty much all the townships are now working on how to spend their ARPA funds. They've all applied, and I think they've all received first payment. So that's good news for them.
That pool in Marla, is that a community pool?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That was built in
That's been there a long
1957
time.
by the Lions.
Is that the only community pool in the county?
Decker will have one in
Deckerville's got
Marlette.
one.
No, it's been closed for
Must be
years.
then. Yep.
So I went to Speaker Township and their board meeting touched on an item of interest for most of the municipalities, that is wind energy conversion systems. They did have in October a public hearing and had since adopted an ordinance change having some increased heights to allow Liberty Wind Park system to come in and do a study, which they're currently doing. It looks like it's pushing forward. They'll have a public hearing on March for the land use change or variance to allow the wind energy conversion systems to come in and actually get in place. I did bring up the topic about elected officials being forward and upfront and as transparent as possible about their own benefit on their own acreage and property that was already being considered for use for these wind energy conversion systems or solar fields. I feel we have an obligation, if not a legal obligation, an ethical obligation to let individuals know that while I may be in support of it for reasons X, Y, and Z, I stand to benefit because I have property that I'm going to benefit from. It's not necessarily a conflict of interest, I don't believe, but it's definitely an ethical consideration that we should let people know about those items that affect us directly. It spurred a conversation after the meeting that was useful and interesting. Then I went to Worth Township the following night, and it was a planning commission meeting, and that was the topic of concern was wind energy conversion systems. Now, Worth is really not in the running because they don't have the wind patterns that Speaker of Fremont has. So it's already been evaluated and they're not in the running, but they were concerned about their ordinance and whether or not their ordinance had enough, whether or not their ordinance would make it difficult for wind energy conversion systems to be widespread. And indeed, it seemed that their ordinance had the right kind of language to prevent that. For example, they have a height restriction of 165 feet, I believe, which would need to be changed. But that's what happens. You go to the planning commission, ask for a variance or what's the word? Zoning Board of Appeals. You get those kind of things changed and you have public hearings. And if people don't read the newspaper, they're not aware of what's going on, and boom, all of a sudden you've got an ordinance changed. I will say that in Fremont Township, I had several citizens call me, and once I spoke to one about the change that occurred in October, they got on the line and talked to other individuals, and they were upset about it. And I don't know what to tell you. I mean, when you have a public hearing, you're required to post it in a paper of record, and that's done. But let's face it, most of us not be looking in the paper of record on a regular basis. I don't know if you guys have experienced concern from townships saying, how do we reach people? How do we let them know these things are going on? And it's an excellent opportunity to consider ARPA funding that your municipality may have received to update or actually create a website with all the things that people are interested, like ordinances, having them available on your website so they can download them freely, have notification systems and such that they can opt in and receive emails for important, notification. Not required by law, but certainly a benefit for the community and, the individuals that want to get that information out there. That's not what I talked about at my meeting, but I think that's worthy of saying. So I'm done.
Valid point, Commissioner Wyatt. Thank you. At this time, we'll move on to our administrator's report. Tara?
Yep, so since we met on March 1st, I attended 2 additional MREC executive committee meetings. So we're still continuing to go through the proposed DTE settlement agreement. There's still a lot of steps that we have to get through in order to get the settlement finalized. The attorneys are estimating maybe around April. Late March would probably be the earliest. So I'll keep you posted on any updates that I can. And then with regard to the medical care facility and the health dimensions group, strategic planning and operational audit, we did establish some dates to review the final report. And then we did establish a special Board of Commissioners meeting on Wednesday, March 9th at 9:00. So we'll have a presentation from HDG at that time. And then last Tuesday, we had our ARPA committee question and answer session with our department officials, just to review any questions that they may have had over the grant application process. We also talked about the grading rubric too. And then next week, beginning on Tuesday, we'll have Yo and Yo, our auditors will be on site for field work. It'll be over the next 2 weeks. They may be in and out, so you might notice them in this back room here if you happen to be on site. And then another highlight, I had a county administrators meeting last week. They're talking about the proposed state budget for fiscal year 23. So it does look promising for counties. They talked about a 5% increase to revenue sharing, and then an ongoing 5% increase to revenue sharing. They're also proposing retention bonuses for public safety workers. They talked about funding for court-wide case management systems. And then there's also support for local health departments. So it did look really promising for counties. I guess we'll see how it rolls out over the next few months. I did send a copy of that presentation to you, so you should have that. But if you need it, just let me know. I can resend it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we have public comments that pertain to agenda items only. There will be another time for public comments, general public comments later in the meeting. But at this time, are there any comments related to the agenda? Hearing none. At this time, I'm going to open a public hearing for the removal of a planning commission member. Are there any comments on the removal of the planning commission member?
I just have one we talked about the last meeting, John. It's a really good person, was on our planning committee, and somehow he just dropped off the face of the earth. And so we have to have a replacement for that. So.
Yep, just a formality. I'm going to leave that public hearing open. I will close it right before we actually take action on it. So leave time for comments.
Any chance we've paid a visit to the domicile in which this person resides?
There was a move involved
Okay.
in this, so we lost
Okay.
contact in every form, unfortunately. Okay, moving on. At this time, we have a presentation from Bryant Wilkie, our health officer. Welcome, Bryant.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate the time you've offered to me. Change focal points here a little bit. I don't want the patch to intimidate you guys.
Only if you're.
It is intimidating.
Wait a minute.
I just noticed sometimes it's on the other eye too.
Bill, you're the sharpest one. I tell you. No offense to anybody, you're the sharp one. So I'm here to discuss to you a building strategy. in regards to our current building versus a new building. And we've done some discussions with the building and grounds, and John and I have talked, and a couple others we've talked. So we thought it's time to come to you and open up the discussions, because that's a significant undertaking for all of us as a public health department and other agencies that we support at our building, as well as the county itself and the community. So I'm not going to go into, a whole lot of detail, but I want to kind of touch the surface of what our strategy is and what we're looking at, and then move on forward with, I'm sure, many more building and grounds meetings and things of that nature, and finance meetings in the future. So as you're aware, we're over at 171 Dawson. It was built back in 1992, I believe, and there was an addition in 1995. The building was really built for home medical care, where they went out and visited, and some patients came to the facility. So there's a lot of offices there, and I think all of you have been there and know how cut up it is. And meaning the offices are spaced, and there's kind of people refer to it as the maze. Most people that walk into the building say that is, well, this is really a maze. Where am I going? I need help. Very small entrance area and things of that nature. So we've always known there's been a deficit in that regards for a public health department to be housed there. But we really we got by, and we've been getting by. But we really noticed that we need to do some things in the building to make a difference for our community and how we service folks. And this goes back, I think it was in our strategic plan in 2020. The top priority was, let's take a look at our building. What can we do to make it more efficient for us to be servicing our clients? And of course, in 2019, 20 there, right? COVID hit. Then we realized, oh boy, we are really at a deficit with a building, because we can't even do, mass fax, or we can't have a whole lot of people here. And I see Will is here, and I thank him, because Will Morris and Rich Hall, they stood up and said, hey, can we help you somehow? And we're still utilizing CMH facility for vaccinations. So that's really work that we're a collaborative and been able to reach out to our community and get by. But we know that's not a long-term solution. So looking at our current building, we do have an understanding what the building needs. And we're kind of concerned with the building in regards to what it's going to take cost-wise to get it up to par, and also accommodate the health department. And when I say the health department, the building itself, I'm really talking about all our agencies at the health department. So that includes veterans, Med Authority, we have a CAC there.
MSU Extension.
Thank you, MSU Extension.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm talking about all of them when I'm talking about the health department. So we know we got a facility that's kind of hampering us in regards to our service delivery. We know that it's going to take some money if we really want to engage in that building. And we're kind of worried about the worth or the value of that, putting money into that building. And we really, and I talked to John today, we really want to verify that, how much that's going to cost. Because I've talked to several architects and things like that over the phone, and know the area or know the building, and they're all shaking their head. Ooh, this is going to be costly. And we're talking millions and millions of dollars, correct? So that's one prong of our strategy. And the other prong of the strategy is we've reached out, and after just a couple of discussions with the building and grounds, we started looking for another parcel. Would it be more beneficial for us to look for property and build a new building? And I think all of us as homeowners kind of go through that sometimes. Should we look for existing house? Should we move? Should we build? It's kind of the same thing, but a grander scale, because there's so many facets involved in this, being the Board of Health and as well as you folks. So we did reach out, and about a year ago, we discovered that Maple Valley was for sale, the Maple Valley property over on Pine Street. And recently, after some discussions and reviews, we're actually entering a purchase agreement with them with several contingencies. And those contingencies will cover the basis for us in regards, we'll be able to raise the money for a new building. will the health department currently at its location be able to be sold? And there's a couple others.
There's other contingencies related to an environmental inspection on the property, and things of that nature. But in a nutshell, we're all covered that if any parts of the puzzle don't come together, we're not locked into a purchase.
So would you have to tear down part of that building because that was a
Yes,
plan?
part of the process over at looking at the Maple Valley would be to
That one whole wing has to go, right?
Yeah, demolition parts of it. The ISD would be separated out for their space. They would remain there, and that's kind of part of the bigger idea, the bigger picture thing. I will try to stress with you in a minute on how we could utilize that property for everybody. Excuse me. And in that regard, Gary, we would demo, and then we would have some type of plan designed to build. And I'm not sure what to call it, because you can call it a community well-being park or a community center or a service center for agencies. So, because our plan would be if we did decide and everybody was on board to move and build a new building, we would definitely want veterans and all those agencies we talked about to come with us. And that's kind of this part of the scope or strategy, which we'll get into part of the financing of the building itself. We're kind of leaning that way, but we're not there yet, because the reason for me to come to you guys today too is to start open discussion, to start moving forward and seeing where we can go with this project. Any questions so far? So part of the project over at Maple Valley that really interests us is the fact that it's 19 acres. The ISD is already located there, and we would remove parts of the building that we wouldn't need. And one of the facets over there is the media center, is a large complex behind the center that's attached to parts of the building that we would demo. We think that potentially could become a community center. And that community center would not only act as a mass vac or other public health needs, but could also be used by the community. And that's kind of one of the attractants of this is if we were able to develop this 19 acres, not only for the health department, for anybody, other agency that might come along. I think you mentioned the pool earlier regarding Marlette. It is the only public pool available in the community. Maybe somebody could come out with the grant money for a pool and a pool house, just like Marlette did. We would have the property to offer that to them. We could enter an intergovernmental agreement to give them a section of the property. So things like that could develop down the road.
What would, maybe you're gonna wait till the end for a question. What do you do with the ISD?
ISD, it's an interesting situation because they own the building on the property that's owned by Sandusky Schools. We would be taking possession of the property. Their portion of the building that they own that we do not demo is still under a 50-year, I think they have a 30-year remaining lease on that building.
Yeah.
So they would remain there.
And that would work well within what you're trying to.
Yes. The theme of a community service facility or a health well-being park, it would work perfectly. And what's nice about that, it's right next to Sandusky Parks and Recreation, which is an advantage to us when we do community events and things of that nature. So, that idea, and it's a grand idea, it makes sense to us though, to be kind of located there. And when you look at 171 Dawson, right now we're kind of squeezed between two industrial areas. So it's really attractive to us. But the key is, is it doable? So you're going to say to me, well, where are you going to come up with that kind of money? Because a new building's going to cost. And we know we got to put money into our current building. So we really have multiple sources that we have to look at. And you'll see in April from us, from the health department, with the adjoining agencies that are with us, the proposal for our money. There's also, and I heard Tara, whether it's infrastructure or not, the health departments are being really supported now because of the COVID. And it's probably the best time in order to move forward on something like this is probably right now. So there are state or federal potential grants available. And then we know based on building and construction today costs, we'll probably have to look at a USDA loan, the low interest loan to support part of this. So 3 or 4 different sources would be funding. The idea too is to try to step out of what we've been entrenched in regards to long-term building, the facility itself and maintenance, right? So it's difficult to keep up with a large commercial building like that in regards to cost, actually in manpower as well. So if we were able to step out, we know as a health department to step away from rent. Yes, there might be a loan to pay off, but re-optimizing that loan to 30 years and things, we've done the calculations. Stepping away from rent from the county will help free up general dollars for us. Rent coming in as income could be placed into account, not only to take care of your current maintenance on a building, you're probably 7-10 years before you have major maintenance issues to deal with, but we could start building a fund to keep that building long-term maintained and operable. So there is a long-term solution that we're looking at too, is how can we keep funding in this building so that we're not you're not scrambling when the furnace goes out or the water softener goes out or the roof leaks, things of that nature. So that's kind of part of the strategy too, is how can we make this a win for the community, the county, and all the departments that we're hoping to house there. And that's, I think I've touched upon most of the talking things that I really wanted to today.
I'll start with the last thing you said. So you identified the need to have an ongoing maintenance fund to take care of the issues that you outlined are currently affecting this current building. Why would you be able to do that with your own property somewhere else, carrying a note for the loan, if that can't be done now? That sounds like a great idea. We should be implementing it immediately. How are you, a government entity, going to do any better than has been currently done with maintenance of vehicles? Because it's been poor. How are you going to, make sure that happens?
Good question. It's really a transfer of responsibility and ownership because we don't own the current building. I could go out and get a USDA loan right now to remodel the building, but I'm not going to do that. You wouldn't expect me to do that because I don't own that building, right? But in the transfer of building a building, becoming ownership and taking responsibility and collection of that rent. And here's the key too. It's really, is it feasible for us to get a low interest loan and pay less rent for, the 30-year amortization of that loan and recap that money that we wouldn't be paying out for rent? And we've done the numbers and it could happen. Now, will rent go up for leasee, who would be your agencies and my agencies that we work together? Maybe a bit. So it's a formula that we really have to be, is this going to work versus staying put where we're at and continuing that rent coming in, and what will we get back in return for it?
Well, the health department.
If that makes sense.
Well, yes. From my position, I'm thinking that the health department has the capability of accessing funding revenues, funding streams in a greater measure than the county itself does. So with that being said, I don't see the county as, I don't like the idea of us becoming renters now rather than landlords. And we'll be inputting a tremendous amount of funding, or funding will be passing through us in some measure, but it will be funding that we're responsible for in some great measure. And I don't see how we would be taking ownership in that capacity by giving funding, but then still be on the end of needing to pay rent. So that would be something that would have to be worked out, I assume.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
What I heard you say here is we might have to increase rent. And I'm thinking that would apply to us.
It did. And I don't know that for sure, because what's really important too is for us to, if we did make this decision as a Board of Health and as a Board of Commissioners to move forward on a new building, we'd want to do a space utilization study on the new building. We make sure we want to be sure that the building's LEED design, so our energy consumption is at the lowest. Things of that nature that need to go into that type of thing versus the existing building. there definitely needs to be a cost comparison about where we're at and what we want to do in the future. To me, when you look at the numbers, and it's going to set us up long-term versus what we're doing now. And we're sitting on a building that needs a lot of attention. And not only structurally, but then we got to look at the public health side of it in regards to clinic restructure and things of that nature that we need to become ADA compliant and also HIPAA compliant. So all that formula and the strategies there, and it's going to take many meetings and discussions to get to that point.
I have a couple more questions if the board will bear with me. So first of all, what has the Board of Health, the health board, what's their position behind this? Are they up to speed on it? Are they recommending such a strategy?
Absolutely, yes.
And
Even to the point where we're entering in a purchase agreement with Sandusky with those contingencies so that we can really start rolling out the strategy of what's going to work best for us as a health department in the county and as a community, definitely.
so I think it's reasonable that if this board was to make a decision, we would base it on several factors, but the primary factor being the health board's recommendation. And I would like to see a copy of either the transcript or otherwise that shows that the health board is firmly behind such an action. And then going back, I just wanted to ask you a question. What have been the locations for the Satellite County Health Department over the last, say, 40 years? I know you've moved around a little bit, and each step's a little bit bigger in the footprint in which you occupy. Can you?
My limited history, I know two places currently where we're at, and the way reach out down many, many years ago, we were in your attic upstairs at one point in time.
In the attic?
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't know in between if there's any history where we've
Were
been,
you ever housed at the medical care facility that's currently?
not that I'm aware
It
of.
was the mental health that was at medical care? Okay.
I believe so.
Yeah, I believe that was the case. What's different from the medical care facility structure from the Maple Valley and what you're projecting to have happen over there, other than the parks and stuff?
Structure wise.
Yeah. I mean, from the street, they look similar, right? With wings and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I don't know if the new structure would look like that, but I
Okay.
do know it'd be probably a first floor structure.
Mhm.
Our veterans currently have to go up a flight of stairs or elevator that's kind of around the corner. Things of that nature would be taken into account that's why I mentioned ADA and HIPAA compliance.
Mhm.
We'd want to bring everybody down to a first floor, similar to what CMH has, first floor access for our clients and as well as our employees.
Well, one of my questions was the scope of future expansions and any new programs in the future. You didn't really talk on that. About the only thing you mentioned in terms of the future would be facilitation for those that have ADA issues and things of that nature. You just spoke on it again. Is there a summary of what your future expansion needs would want to be? I think we talked about before about the scope of new programs and implementing them. You did talk about having space available for other agencies to want to take advantage of that space, whether it was for a community pool or otherwise. Anything related specifically to the health departments?
I'll be honest with you, I've been more focused on in regards to other community partners like under 5 program, daycare, things like that. Future program expansion in public health at a local level. I think right now the most we've seen maybe is our prevention programming. And about a year ago, we made some decisions versus whether we're going to counsel and do therapy work for substance use or prevention. So the biggest expansion probably is the need for a little bit more space because there's been additional people added to prevention. But I don't see a massive movement for program expansion. Environmental health, we're doing fairly well. We're keeping the pace on that area and other programs. Maybe adjustments. And the need for us, our drive is, do we have a HIPAA compliant clinic? And currently I can tell you, no, we don't. We don't. So we have to do certain things and speak to people in the clinic, in private and things of that nature that just don't meet the definition of a HIPAA compliant clinic today with CMS or anybody else. So those are barriers that we got to get through, and we've been doing it. But at some point in time, it's really necessary to move forward and get that structure that you need to facilitate services.
Are you considering collaboration with other counties in offering what you just described, other agencies using your facilities and things of that nature? Like the SDIs, is it SDI, is that the term, substance?
SDI, no.
Now, what's it called?
Different.
SID? What's the acronym for substance use abuse?
Yep, substance use.
Yeah.
SU.
Because I know that we talked before about, someone from Lapeer coming in here and the problems for us to provide space. Remember that was an issue. You relinquished responsibility for some of those programs.
Right.
Some of it may have been space related or otherwise. I don't know.
Yeah, what you're getting at is something that we find too difficult where we're at. The flexibility of space. And new buildings, of course, have more flexibility because they're designed that way. And that's what's so attractive about a new building versus our current building.
Mhm.
And, I know I'm leaning that way, but I told John just this morning, we're open to, things don't pan out financially where we look at the amount of money we need to build a new building, but we have to invest in our current building, then we would do that. Obviously, we would do that. We would want to do that. We're just trying to find that, what's the best strategy for our home? And then once we pick that home, let's put everything we've got into it and make it work.
Well, Brian, Will's back there. I applaud you for what you're doing, and I know we've had meetings over the last 3 years, what the cost would be to put in that building. All of us been there several times. It's a cut-up building, but you hit it on all 8 cylinders, I thought, today, your presentation, but there's some highlights here. We have 1 floor. Everybody's on the ground floor. You talked about a community center, which we badly need here in Sandusky, and I know there's a lot of work to do and a lot of questions to be answered yet, but personally, I think it's a great idea. And I think as we move forward, we'll see the benefits of that. But, again, as Commissioner Wise said, there's some questions need to be answered and some things ironed out. But having all that said, I think you've got ample parking there. You've got 19 acres. It's good for expansion over the years. And I wish you the best, as we move forward.
Thank you.
Understand that this concept has been vetted through the building and grounds. So we've had ample time to go through all of this, and that's why Brian's here today to start this process. So it's before all of us now. And John sits on that board with me. I think you would agree with that.
I agree with that. And Joel, I think you brought up a good point that it is important that the Board of Health is on board with this. And we can certainly provide meeting minutes, but I can attest to the fact that there was a motion and support and a unanimous vote amongst the Board of Health to move forward with the purchase agreement, which I think is an indication of the Board of Health's, they believe in looking into this. So, and Brian, you certainly are in the camp of this needs to be a win for the county. It needs to be a win for the health department. It needs to be a win for the community. And if we can't make all those things happen, we're going to go a different route.
Absolutely. For sure. And that's the way it needs to be.
So Commissioner Heberling made a comment about Sandusky needs a community health center. And more appropriately, it should be said.
No, community center.
Yeah, Sanilac County perhaps needs a community center. And that's one of the issues of contention with some of the constituents in the outlying area. For example, we got a recycling center that's located in Sandusky. And it's not as easily accessible by those who live on the perimeter, right? And it may be or may not be centrally located, but we have to take into consideration that, again, this is the biggest county under the bridge, right? So it's a pretty big area. And I can tell you that, the folks along the southern border, the idea of having a community center located in Sandusky and that being the best place for it, they would have a different opinion of that because it's not easily accessible, or it's easily accessible, but it's not like, conveniently accessible. But I guess that's just the way things are. I mean, you can't have one on every corner. I get that. One of the things that you mentioned about providing not necessarily programs or services, but rather the opportunity for the room in which that can be done by other agencies or community groups or whatever. And that's a laudable idea. It reminds me of the PACE Center that's being developed or has been developed down in St. Clair County for, I think, the Centers for Aging or the Senior Advocate. Can't remember the term.
I'm thinking area agency and aging, but I'm not. 100%.
I think you're right. And the Pace Center is similar in that it's a space where these things are being provided. And in what you were describing here, there's an opportunity for a revenue stream to be created just by having this particular space. Is that reasonable to say?
That's correct.
Not-
Charlotte has a similar facility. It's called Live. And it's, people come from all over to participate, whether it's bingo, dance class, use a room, rent a space for a shower, whatever that might be your activity, but it's available to everybody. And I know it's difficult, what you're saying in locating one place, but at least Sandusky is right in the center. of
Yeah, it's in the center.
Saying like somebody was smart when they developed Sandusky, right? Because we do need to be inclusive for everybody, because this is not just a health department building, it's not just a vets building or whatever. It's a community center for the entire county.
It should be noted too that the health department utilized several churches in Sanilac County to provide the mass vaccination as well. It wasn't just mental health nor the Sanilac transportation. Several of our community churches stepped up and offered their places up for extended periods of time, and I think it worked out well. You know, that's a good testament to an emergency plan that you implemented on part of handling this pandemic, that found the facilities that were available to make that happen. You did a good job on that.
Well, thank you. And thank you for mentioning the churches, the schools that stepped up to host activity like that, and the repeated activities. It worked well for us. It fit the bill, and it got out to the community. So thank you for that.
The work that you did might have cost you your eyesight, but it was a risk I was willing to take. No, I'm kidding.
Good job, dude, right?
Any last questions for Brian?
Thank you, Brent.
Brian, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, moving on, we have Dawn Cubitt, our 911 director. Dawn, welcome. Thank you for being here.
13 years ago, since I stood here in front of a whole different board saying why we need this 911 millage, but here I am. Back, just to give you a little bit of history as to how this came to be, back 13 years ago, we were dealing with a 20-year-old antiquated radio system based on analog phone circuits. When it rained, snowed, I didn't want to come to work because I knew it was going to be bad. There was static. I'm sure these guys can attest to that. It was just not good. And then we had an FCC mandate that said by January of 2011, we had to be narrowband, and our system was not capable of that. So we had that to deal with. And then 911, next generation 911 was coming. We didn't know what it was going to be or how much it was going to cost, but we knew it was going to be expensive. So our 911 advisory board, we tried grants, FEMA grants. We just were little fish in a big pond, and we weren't getting any of those. So former prosecutor Young came up with the idea that why don't we try to go for a millage to help get this, not just now, but for the future of our radio system and anything else related to 911. So our biggest hurdle was, I love him, former Commissioner Jim Ruby, God rest his soul. He was very frugal with county money, wasn't really keen about raising taxpayers, taxes, but he saw the need. And he even walked in the parade in Marlette with us, handing out flyers to help get this passed. And if you actually talk to my kids, it was the worst summer of their life because they walked the longest parade routes in the world in Sahara temperatures. And they'll probably tell you they didn't have any shoes on either. But anyway, we walked, fire, EMS, and police came together. It was really refreshing. And the millage passed by the most overwhelming margin out of all the ballots, or all the millages on that ballot that year. And it still is to this day. And so what we have done is we've upgraded our radio system to microwave. We're able to utilize 3 other towers in the county, which some of those businesses are getting funding for rent. So we were helping them out. We had to put a tower up in Delaware because that was one of our bad areas in the county. That's been phenomenal. Lexington Township, we have equipment on their tower that they have there. And we were able to get our new 911 system in place. Bought a new phone system for the sheriff's office and central dispatch because we were on an analog system and 911 wouldn't work with that. We bought it robust enough to include the courthouse when they were ready, and they came on the system. We moved over to the EOC Center. We spent a lot of money. We paid for the networking there. We have a backup radio system there now too, in case our VHF system goes down or microwave system goes down.
We bought pagers, mobile radios, portable radios for law enforcement, EMS, and fire. We bought rave alert systems for the schools in the courthouse, ABL units for law enforcement, anything, we're paying tower maintenance, leasing, that kind of thing. You're getting $27,000 a year in rent out of that millage for us being over there. And we were able to save enough. This year, we have 3 major projects going. We're going to simulcast our radio system. We're going to go digital, which is going to be a mandate here, not too long, far out. And we are doing the CAD upgrade, which with the sheriff's office and the other law enforcement agencies in the county. And we also have our 911 equipment is now 6 years old. We need to update. I got that all. So any questions or concerns?
On a personal note, Dawn, you've done a great job over
Well,
there.
thank you. I appreciate that.
In my short time here, Dawn, there's been at least a couple of times that you've saved the taxpayers money by going the extra mile or getting information in on time ahead of deadlines and things. So thank you for that.
Thank you. So I would like to see this on the ballot, please, as a renewal.
Part of the ballot language describes how a portion of the taxes can be captured by a variety of entities. What's been the percentage of tax capture from any entity other than specifically for the 911 millages purported purpose? Has there been any other captures?
Just for the windmills, I believe is part of the problem that I get, reductions from. That's the only really thing I've ever seen from a cost.
Nothing
It's not
for-
a big percentage, really. Not huge.
And what would be your backup plan should the ballot measure fail?
ARPA funds?
Put it on the ballot again at the next.
There you go. There you go.
I mean, we didn't have that luxury back then, but,
Well, I mean, it's been a long time that you've had the millage. You've been using the money appropriately.
Mhm.
I agree with their assessment. You've done a fine job at that. Were that to go away, do you have alternate methods in which to still continue providing the level of service that we've grown accustomed to? Or is there a minimum service that you would be able to still provide?
well, as far as 911, we would be, we're getting surcharge money in the state 911 fee money. That level of service would remain the same. As far as being able to supply radios and things like that, upgrade to new equipment, I'd be coming back to the board saying, I need some general fund money to help out. If there are no grants, I would obviously look for those.
So you'd see a hit on the various communities that you support by giving them radios and things like that, where they'd have to come up with their own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was a big sign. And the firemen, the first time, were astronomical and getting that passed. They went door to door. They talked to their neighbors, their friends, with the leadership of Todd and the fire chief, Steve Bales.
Firemen are awesome like that.
Well, they really did. They went because they knew they didn't have money and they needed that equipment and, so.
You mentioned going digital mandate. Are we talking about 800 megahertz digital required?
No, we can go digital on our current system right now.
Okay.
So, and then we have a radio committee looking for the future that 800 might be where we need to go, but there's an $8 million price tag, which I've mentioned before.
And there's some downside to it.
Yes. Yes.
How's it been working? Just a real quick question. How's it been working with the dual band radios for communication? Has those been,
We really don't have too
Do you have
many.
they're mostly, I think the drug task force is the only ones that.
Yeah,
use them.
I think they're working okay. I haven't really heard much from them, but that is our plan with going forward with our simulcast, and the digital is to get more in the outer line parts of the county where, they go out in St. Clair and Lapeer to school up. So we'll have a little more, better idea how those work. They should work well.
Any further questions for Dawn? Hearing none. Dawn, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving on to appointments to standing committees, there are none. County commissioner appointments, there are none. County commission chair appointments, there are none. We do have one general resolution, and Bill is going to read that. It is the resolution supporting the MDNR trust fund grant application.
Whereas the Sanilac County Board of Commissioners supports the submission of an application titled Sanilac County Evergreen Park Accessible Playground and River Access Development to the Michigan Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund for development of a universal accessible playground, putt-putt golf pavilions, river kayak canoe launch pathways, and other accessible amenities at Sanilac County Evergreen Park. And whereas the proposed application is supported by Sanilac County Parks 5-year approved Parks and Recreation Plan And whereas the Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners is hereby making a financial commitment to the project in the amount of $387,383 matching funds in cash and or force account. And now therefore be it resolved that the Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners hereby authorizes submission of a Michigan Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund grant application for $300,000 and further resolves to make available its financial obligation amount of $387,383, 56% of a total $687,383 project cost during the 2022-2023 fiscal year.
Support. Thank you, Bill. We have a motion from Bill, support from Gary, and I will ask for a roll call vote.
Chairman Blah,
Yes.
Commissioner Heberling,
Yes.
Commissioner Sarcella,
Yes.
Commissioner Ballard,
Yes.
Commissioner Wyatt.
Yes.
Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to committee reports, we will start with Commissioner Wyatt.
I don't think we've got any committee reports.
It's only been a week.
Yeah.
Okay. We did have a ARPA meeting this morning. It was discussion about, the total funding amount that the county received and possibly putting a cap on the first round. And we decided to basically just keep it open and see what kind of applications we receive and then make a decision from there. So everything's moving forward nicely. We had our informational question and answer session for ARPA was last Tuesday, and department heads were invited to come and they were able to ask questions right directly to the consultants related to any questions they had about things they were looking to fund. So that's all I have.
Hey, John, you already talked about our ARPA meeting this morning. I have a few other things as far as committees. Tonight we have our Sand Lake Planning Commission, and one of the goals that we have set for 2022 is updating our master plan. And over the past few weeks, we've had our piece sent out to hire a consultant to help us with that master plan. And as of March 15th, because just the way the timing ended up, we were initially going to open up the bids tonight, but we're going to do that March 15th. And as soon as we identify which consultant we're going to hire, we'll get started on the master plan. Last week, I believe it was, I reached out to Booms Construction. They have built our new building over at the Recycle Center, the cold storage building. Also, there was a lot of work needed to be done to the current Recycle building. One was roofing. We need some cement that's long overdue. So they sent us a bid in, and I believe we're going to open that up for bidding for the cement and the roofing too. So that's where we're at with that. The last thing, and I think Tara touched on already in her report, this Thursday, we have a meeting with the medical care facility, myself, Commissioner Ballard, and Tara have been, and Christie, excuse me, have been holding meetings with them. And obviously you've read the paper and you've been in our meetings. We called for an outside audit by our commissioners here. And the last meeting we attended, Jill went into detail what they audited and what they were finding. And actually, it was a fairly good audit. There isn't a lot to improve on. There is some things they can improve on. So we're going to talk about that this Thursday in our meeting at 1:00. And end of my report.
Just the building grounds have met. We failed to talk about that last meeting. Obviously with Brian here today, that was been the gist of our conversation with the health department needs and also looking at the courthouse and some of the infrastructure here. Hopefully moving forward with a couple of those projects as well. That's all I had.
Very good. Thank you. We have no unfinished business, so we will move into new business. Starting with FA 025-22, approval of 2021 current claims.
Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the payment of current claims for 2021 identified on the accounts payable report dated February 8th, 2022 for the general bank accounts in the amount of $24,889.41.
Support.
We have a motion from Commissioner Sarcella and support from Commissioner Ballard. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to FA 026-22, approval of 2022 current claims.
Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the payment of current claims for 2022 identified on the accounts payable report dated February 8th, 2022 for the general bank account in the amount of $93,300.14.
Support.
We have a motion from Bill, support from Gary. Is there any discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to FA 027-22, budget adoptions, amendments, appropriations, and transfers.
Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the following amendments and establishes the following accounts as listed.
We have a motion. Is there support?
Support.
We have a motion from Bill, support from Gary. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to FA 028-22, approval of additional general fund bank account checks charged to January 2022.
Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the payment of additional general fund bank account checks charged to January 2022 as follows. $336,353.86 in payments, $108,982.60 checks for a total of $445,336.46.
Support.
We have a motion from Bill, support from Roger. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to FA 029-22, authorization to purchase cemetery flags and markers, Veterans Affairs.
Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby authorize the Veterans Affairs Director purchase 36 cross flags from U.S. Flag Maker at a cost of $4,656.40 and to purchase 343 markers from New England Flag Manufacturing Company at a cost of $1,505.01 for a total cost not to exceed $6,161.41 with funding from the Veterans Affairs budget.
Support.
We have a motion from Bill and support from Roger. Is there any discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to FA 030-22, authorization to create a Parks Director.
Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby authorizes the Parks Commission to post and fill a Parks Director position at a pay grade 10 with benefits funding from the Parks budget.
Support.
We have a motion from Bill, support from Roger. Is there any discussion on the topic?
Discussion. Well, Roger, we've got this guy that looks at grants, John, right?
Mhm.
And he's done a fantastic job. Now we've got a Parks Director. Is there going to be an opportunity for John to facilitate the new Parks Director, the skill set necessary to navigate future grants?
He would definitely be assisting in that. Yeah.
I imagine John is doing it, not that it's an official company, right? But he's just letting the guy.
Contractual.
Okay. That's all I had there.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to FA 031-22, approval of MGT consulting contract from the prosecutor's office.
Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the prosecutor's contract with MGT Consulting for the purpose of preparing Title 4-D billings and contract services, paternity and child support actions until March 31st, 2024 at an estimated cost of $2,000 annually following state reimbursement with funding from the prosecutor's budget.
We have a motion.
Support.
We have a motion from Bill, support from Gary. Is there any discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Before we jump into the next one, I'm going to call for public comment from the public hearing related to the removal of the planning commission. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. We'll move on to NFA 010-22, authorization to remove planning commission member.
Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby authorizes the removal of a planning commission member from the planning commission board effective immediately.
Support. We have a motion from Bill. We have a support from Joel. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to NFA 011-22, approval of the 911 emergency services millage renewal language.
Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the 911 millage renewal ballot question language and directs the clerk to submit the language to be placed on the August 2, 2022 primary election ballot.
Support.
We have a motion from Bill, support from Roger. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. At this time, we are back to general public comments. Are there any public comments? Mike, did you have something you wanted to speak to us about?
Yes, sir.
The podium is yours.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate this. And I asked, and I talked to John if I could have just a couple extra minutes because I'm representing, four of us, five of us are here. So if each of us had 3 minutes, that'd be 15 minutes, but I only need about 5.
That'd be
So
great.
Hopefully that's okay. My name is Michael Dennis Smith, and I'm a founder of We the County. And we're a constitutional group that just feels we need to stand up and push back because we're losing our constitutional rights. We have members in 76 of the 83 counties. We have hundreds of small businesses on board, hundreds of people all throughout the state. And so first of all, with what I want to do today, there's something that I wrote called Serving Notice, the Truth Will Prevail. It's just kind of an open statement to people in authority that we want to encourage them to make the right choices in these tough times, because we really believe that things are going to get worse than what they are right now. And so that's the purpose of this letter. But I also want to thank all of you. I don't want you to think that this letter is like a personal indictment towards any of you. You guys have done an outstanding job. Two of the things that you have written, the resolution on support of medical autonomy, fantastic document, thank you. Petition for local control of COVID-19 health emergency mitigation. They're excellent, outstanding documents. I wish more of the people who really are the citizens that want to stand for our constitutional rights, they'd be aware of this. I think there'd be a lot more compliments to all of you. So thank you so much for that. So with that said, I would like to read this letter. Now, the language in this is very strong. But it reflects a lot of the concerns that we have with everything that's happening around us today. We're afraid that we are losing our freedoms, and I'll explain those in this letter. The Marxist socialists are attacking our constitutional republic, destroying freedoms by creating laws and mandates that usurp all power from we the people. As tyrannical politicians lord over us, controlling every aspect of our lives by vilifying anyone who speaks or stands up against them, but the truth will prevail. Freedom of speech, assembly, and medical freedom are under assault. Only doctors who agree with the forced vaccination and downplay the effectiveness of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are allowed to speak. 50,000 medical professionals and scientists from around the world have peer-reviewed the science and signed the Great Barrington Declaration, stating these COVID lockdowns and restrictions are doing more harm than good, but they're silenced. Medical science has proven masks do not stop the virus, and they weaken the immune system as people breathe in dangerous levels of carbon dioxide, yet we're still forced to wear masks. As of 12/18/21, the Vaccine Adverse Effect Report Agency, which is a government agency that reports the harms of vaccination, it's called VAERS, from the mRNA vaccination, permanently disabled, 32,644. Hospitalized, 102,857. Miscarriages, 3,230. Deaths, 19,866. Adverse effects from Myrnavax, 946,461. Now our children are being vaccinated and risk permanent injury, even death, as they tell us this experimental vax is safe. The Nuremberg Code will stand, but we believe the truth will prevail. And again, we believe it should be people's choice if you want the vax or not forced medical. Parents who speak out against the school boards are called terrorists. People who are challenging the 2020 election are insurrectionists. People who stand up and protect their property from rioters are called racists. People who have worked hard all their life and given to help others are called white supremacists. Parents who don't want a man using the same bathroom as their little daughter are called haters. Police are called bad, and rioters destroying cities are called peaceful protesters. People who point out our constitutional republic is under attack and being subverted by communists are called conspiracy theorists, but the truth will prevail. When elected officials and people in bureaucratic organizations create laws and mandates that are unjust, violating the original intent of our Constitution, The result is a tyrannical government run by despots. This will lead to lawlessness and chaos as evil becomes good, good becomes evil. Freedom and liberty will be replaced with conformity and bondage as individual rights give way to communistic control. Many politicians and elitists believe they're above the law, but the truth will prevail because the light will overcome the darkness. All authority in our Constitution is delegated by God. The county sheriff is given the highest authority to protect and govern our county. All elected officials of this county have delegated authority from God. Board of Commissioners, county clerk, prosecuting attorney, judges, school boards, township boards, city councils, mayors, and so on, they all have taken an oath which cannot be shirked by hiding behind lawyers and unjust laws and mandates. Therefore, I invoke the Magna Carta and the doctrine of the lesser magistrates. It is the duty of those in authority, our employers, doctors, lawyers, police, elected officials, to interpose for the people, to protect them from unconstitutional laws and tyrannical overreach. They have been put into position by God to protect our local communities, our children, our schools, our businesses, our churches, our medical care, and to keep the peace. Unfortunately, many have sold us out, but the truth will prevail. Therefore, I will stand for the truth in our constitutional republic, no matter what the Marxists call me. I know who I am. I love freedom. I love this country, and I'll stand for the original intent of the Constitution. I'm honored to be called a patriot. County by county, we'll break the bonds of tyranny as we stand together as one voice, bringing the authority to govern back to the local communities. That's the original intent of the Constitution. Therefore, this declaration is serving notice to those in authority, our employers, doctors, lawyers, police, elected officials, that the truth will prevail. People will be held accountable for the decisions that they make. And you can go to servingnotice.org if you want to find out more about that. I just pray that all of you receive a greater revelation of the authority that you have from God. Just like our founding fathers, when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, 4 times they referred to God's authority and said, if it's not for God's authority, we're not going to win this thing against Britain because we can't do it on our own because they got the greatest military in the world. And we're just this tag military and we're toast if it's not for God's authority. And that's what I'm hoping, that people will stand up with God's authority and honor God's laws over some of these tyrannical laws. If you're going to force medical on a person, what that means is I lost my personal autonomy then. And if you can force something into me against my will, that's a violation of the Nuremberg Code. That's a huge violation. And so that's something that's happening. And so when the government then has autonomy over my medical being, that means that I am a slave to them and I've lost all freedom. That's communism. It's happening. And they say, oh, no, we're not forcing anybody. As a pastor, I've had people come to me crying, a single mom, 3 kids, saying in the nursing business, if I don't get this shot, I'm going to lose my job. I won't know how to support my kids. I live paycheck to paycheck. Will you write me a religious letter of exemption? I said, I'll be honored to help you. Now, is that really a choice? What's the mom going to do? She'll take a bullet for her kids. But she knows if she doesn't take the shot, that's it, she's done. Is that a choice? So with that, I thank you for listening to me. And again, I think you guys are doing a great job. Don't take this as an indictment against you. You guys are, I feel, see the truth. I think you guys are Magna Carta leaders. I think you care more about doing the right thing and not selling us out. And I think that that's really important. Sometimes we have to think for ourselves amongst all the hubbub and all the false media that's out there. People don't trust the media. They're falling down almost where, unfortunately, a lot of elected officials. But I think you guys are doing great. And I thank you for all that you're doing. So with that, I just want to give you, I'll just hand it to whoever. This is a brochure just explaining a little bit more about Magna Carta leaders, which I believe all of you are, which is something that led to our Constitution. And then some of us had signed these letters. We have a letter addressed to each one of you, and some other people signed it. I didn't really want to rally the troops and tell a lot of people to be here because I didn't think there was a need. I just wanted to come and read this and let you guys know that we do support you 100% what you're doing. And I just thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for being here.
Can I give this to you, or should I give all this to, along with my opening statement?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other general public comments?
Afternoon, Commissioners. Cole Woods, the field representative for Congresswoman Lisa McLean. I just wanted to go over a few pieces of legislation that kind of came up recently and see if anybody had any questions as well. Recently, the Congresswoman wrote a letter to Secretary of DHS, Department of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, asking for his resignation. Recently, it's come to light that he used taxpayer money to fund flights transporting illegal immigrants all across the country and kept those hidden. He wouldn't release any of the destinations. The TSA was accepting warrants as ID for these illegal immigrants. That just doesn't make any sense to me, as well as them not being required to do any COVID tests or vaccinations. There's been over 2 million encounters with illegals just since Biden took office, and that alone should be enough for somebody to resign. She recently signed a resolution for the Vaccine Mandate Reenlistment Act, and that requires all branch secretaries, sorry for the stuttering today, to reinstate service members separated over vaccine mandates at the grade they were held before their separation. She also recently wanted me to update you on the Build Back Better plan. It's currently dead. The Democrats are trying to part it out and kind of salvage pieces. We're hoping that at least it'll be some good if it comes through that way, because we can debate each part individually. She also recently wrote a letter to Nancy Pelosi opposing and questioning her choice for spending a $140 million contract on these masks that everybody's getting for free. Through the contract, she negotiated with China. So we just gave China $140 million when 70% of their masks don't meet US standards and 60% of their masks are counterfeit. We don't know why Pelosi would do such a thing. Would we have plenty of options for KN95 masks in America? It was well stated throughout. It was debated, and she still ended up going with Chinese masks. She also recently introduced a bill to sanction the CCP, or the theft of American intellectual properties, the ongoing genocide of the Uyghur Muslims. It's just horrible what they're doing over there. And we've been trying to bring that to light. Most people don't want to acknowledge it, especially with the Olympics going on recently. They've been trying to keep everything quiet. We're trying to fight that. And also, last but not least, I know we discussed this previously, Commissioner Hebling. She signed a bill called the No Mandates Act, which would cut any federal funding to any entity or agency, any hospital that enforced a vaccine mandate on their employees. So any type of federal funding, whether it's through ARPA, any type of COVID money, any type of federal funding at all will be cut if this hopefully gets into law. That's a big one that we've been focusing on. We really have high hopes for that. Is there any questions about any legislation upcoming or anything else?
Well, I'm glad to hear your last point. Mike touched on it a little bit. As you know, our daughter is a coordinator over radiology department, X-ray department, in a large hospital in another state. And she did receive the religious exemption. The last we talked, she was still trying to get it. So she was able to keep her job.
They still have to do their weekly testing, I'm assuming.
She still has to test, yeah.
At least she got to keep her job. I'm glad to hear that.
Any further questions for Cole? Thank you for being here and providing an update. It is appreciated.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, I'll ask for public comment one more time. Anybody else? Hearing none, we'll move on. We have no need to approve closed session, meeting minutes, or closed session, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Chairman, just before we do, just make an announcement that there is a special meeting. It was mentioned earlier by the administrator. If you hadn't paid attention, March 9th, it should be in the paper so you can read about it. But it's a special board meeting. We don't do them too often, so you're kindly invited. Please attend because it's a public meeting. Thank you.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Support. We have a motion from Bill, support from Roger. All those in favor?